Yeah, I've been in the state now 23 years this summer, and started out by trade. I'm a radio technician. I started out in the Marine Corps doing ground radio repair, and came to work for the state 23 years ago. It's been kind of exciting. I've been the PMO, or the Director of Project Management Office, for the last about a year and a half. So it's been a great deal of fun. One of the things we're going to talk about today is teams, specifically with projects. And recently I was at the University of Utah. A couple of you in the room are from the University of Utah. And there was a team there in their physics labs that came up with a new substance that I wanted to test. So I'm going to need some volunteers, and I'm thinking maybe 2 from each of the groups. You can decide amongst your group who the volunteers are going to be, but I'm going to need them to come up here and test out this spray that this new the physics group at the University of Utah came up with. And it's called an Antigravity Spray. And it must work because it's on a label, and we all believe everything we read on a label, right? Okay. So we have our team, and I took it from different tables because I know that you're already working as a team at the same table, so we're forming a new team. And what we need is something to test this anti-gravity spray on. And oh wait a minute, I have something right here. I've been a scoutmaster for years, so I always have a spare set of tent poles with me. So what we're going to do is we're just going to coat this. And by the way, this actually smells a lot like Lysol, which is probably a good thing because scouts have been handling these tent stakes. And it's a little slippery now. Hope it doesn't fall. I actually read about this in a book at the library. I just couldn't put the book down. So, sorry, I couldn't resist. So we need rules. We've got to have rules for a test. So rule number 1 is, amongst our test group here, no talking. That's a good rule. Another rule is you can only have 1 finger on the tent pole. Okay? It has to be underneath. It can't be on top or on the side. 1 finger on the pole. And very simple test. All we're going to do is lower this thing. Oh, I almost got away from me there. Hang on. We're going to lower it to the ground. Very simple test to do. So just come up here on either side of this. 1 finger underneath. Yes, everyone touch the pole somewhere. 1 finger. And the rule is you have to stay in constant contact with it, okay?
Can it be anywhere on the finger?
Anywhere on the finger.
Okay.
Okay. I'm going to let go. Now just simply lower it to the ground.
Bring it down.
Come on, guys, slower.
No talking, no talking. Shh, no talking. You can move around. No, not on top. You can only be on the bottom. Just lower it to the ground. No talking. Oh. Wow. It has a mind of its own. Was I not clear with the instructions? Just lower it to the ground. That's all you got to do. Too much anti-gravity spray, I can tell. Too much. Okay. Okay, let me change the rules a little bit. Now you can talk. Now you can talk.
Everyone squat.
No, not on top. Not on top. It has to be underneath. Underneath.
Get on your knees. It's gonna fall. Can't actually float. Everyone just drop to the floor.
Does everybody let go of it? Yeah. Let go.
Constant contact.
We do.
Good job, team. You guys are doing great.
Okay, that's close enough. Good job. Okay. All right. They were able to do it, undoubtedly because the anti-gravity wore off. I know that's why you were able to get that done. Okay, did anyone notice in the group dynamics one of the first rules we started with and why that was a problem? What was it? No talking, no communication between the team members, right? And that, so there were undoubtedly people with a lot of great ideas, but they weren't able to express them, and they were trying to implement their own ideas in their own ways, and we had the thing going all over the place and walking across the room. But when we have open communication, then we're able to work together. When I first had this done for me, we had someone go 1, 2, 3 down, 1, 2, 3 down, and we'd slowly, just inch it down. But it's really difficult to do. But that's a good team building exercise, and we'll talk about that a little bit too. I wanted to, since we don't have a limited amount of time today, I want to think of the one, I'm very graphic in nature, and I wanted one thing that we could do, or I could show you, that would help you with project management, simple projects, complex projects, use it any time. So if you just jot this chart down really quick, you'll be ready to handle any project. Oh, I haven't advanced it yet, hang on. Here you go. Just jot this down real quick, and you'll be ready to go any project that comes along. It's very simple. And it can be used for many different things. If you happen to be in Tokyo, it's also the subway map there, but it's good for the Project Management Institute projects too. So we're going to talk about team building. A sequence of planned activities aimed at improving teamwork to increase group cohesion and effectiveness. Those are great words. I'm kind of a visual person, so what does that actually mean? It means you get people together that don't usually work together. Wow, you can't hardly see that, can you? Can you kill some more lights? Okay. And you have them start to function as a team towards a common goal. See if this works. Now you can see the teamwork, right? Now I don't know what the dog gets out of this. Maybe they take turns. I'd like to see that slide. Okay, there's 3 different team building ways you can build a team. One of them is a personality-based thing. Maybe some of you have taken this. You take a test that says, please answer the following questions honestly. And you learn some things about yourself, and you can learn some things about one another. Businesses often require their employees to go through this, and you can be coded as a blue or a green or a dog or a cat or however they want to do it. That's kind of useful because a lot of times when you first get thrown together as a team, you know little more than a face and a name. Well, a name anyway. We don't have faces there. And that's all you know about them. But wouldn't it be nice to know through these personality tests you can learn things like Sally likes to argue and Jim is introverted, analytical, prefers to work alone. He's probably a programmer at DTS doing software. But at least you have some basis to interact with them. And so those kind of team building exercises can be somewhat useful. Has anyone ever seen this person? I'm just curious. Show of hands, a few of you have seen this person. What does she do?
She does energy profiling. She also does Dress Your Truth. She does.
Yep. Dress Your Truth. My wife is very interested in this, and I'm not professing that you buy her books or anything like that. It's just an example of some profiling. I never liked the term profiling, and my wife was telling me she was really excited about this one night and telling me, oh, this woman does these amazing things. You learn about what kind of colors you can wear. She doesn't teach you, based on your skin tone, you can wear this color or that color. She says based on your personality. These are the kind of colors and things, kind of clothing to wear, and a very holistic approach. And she's telling me about the type 1s and 2s, and my wife's a type 1. And, dripping with sarcasm, I put my nose in the air and I say, well, Corrine, I don't like to be labeled by people that don't even know me. And my wife, nonplussed, says, well, that's because you're a 4. The second way to do it is skills-based, and you're doing a lot of that right here today. You take a group of people that have a similar job responsibilities, put them together and train them. And just by learning their own job responsibilities side by side as they build their skills, they're able to build their teamwork together, just by learning kind of simultaneously. And you usually do it different groups. You put a group of worker bees together, maybe they're in construction or on an assembly line, and sometime by the time the training is done, they'll have them do some kind of a goofy human pyramid. I don't know why the men are on the bottom. I don't know what that says or if it's meant to say anything. Maybe they're the foundation of the organization. Probably not. Okay. Women are better. That's probably what it means. Management teams get together, and when they're done doing their management exercises, they'll probably do the same inevitable human pyramid. And for the overachievers in the room, they have a way of doing that too. They just, yeah. So as soon as we're done with this, we're going to get together. No, I'm just kidding. We're not going to do that. But this is a skill-based way to build a team. Another way is activity-based. And activity-based is what kind of similar to what we just did, isn't it? So you put people in a room together, and one of the greatest ways I've seen this done, and it's so simple, I didn't even like it at first when it was first done to me. You put a stack of magazines in the middle of the table with scissors and cardboard paper and glue, and you have them build like a collage. Has nothing to do with work. It's completely non-threatening, non-confrontational, because we're not talking about roles towards the project that we're going to build. We're just getting people in a room so they can get to know one another. So you have them doing something completely outside of the project. It's very non-threatening for the people that are kind of the introverts. They don't feel pressured, and they get to know one another before they move forward with the project. The other way is to put them in a group and give them a challenge. Something really lame, like, I don't know, a anti-gravity stick or something like that. And they'll learn to work together. This is actually one of my favorite ways to do it. It actually kind of covers the other ones together. Okay, moving on to how teams interact with one another. In 1965, a psychologist by the name of Bruce Tuckman came up with this concept of how teams are formed and how they progress together. And he labeled it forming, storming, norming, and performing. And sometime later on, he added adjourning. I don't know how he missed the fact that that doesn't rhyme, but someone added morning later just because it sounds better, I guess. But we're going to go through these steps right now. So in the forming stage, your team comes together. They have different ideas of how they want to see things get done, different expectations, different hopes, different understandings of what the goal's interpretation is. They're kind of all over the place. They're highly dependent on leadership. We're going to talk about leadership with these right after we're done going through them. And your major issues, first off, are personal well-being. You know, what's in it for me? Will I be accepted by this group? Will I not be? I don't often get along successfully with new groups. Gosh, I hope this goes okay. That's the kind of things people are thinking about. As the team progresses, and you can help them progress more quickly by giving them other challenges to work on, again, outside of the project. But as you go into the storming phase, now people are starting to say, well, here's my interpretation of the goal we're trying to reach, and here's how I think we should do it. And then you'll have people work together in little pockets. Well, I like that idea. Well, we don't like that idea. And they'll kind of gang up against one another. Now, you might say this is a phase that you should avoid. But the truth is, this is a phase you need to get through as quickly as possible, because you are going to go through this phase in a team and a project every time. Now, you may do it in small degrees, or you may do it with quite a lot of storming, depending on what the goals of the project are and the team members are. But you will go through a storming phase. The idea is not to stay stuck in it, and there's a role for leadership in that as well. Hopefully, you can get to norming fairly quickly. This is where we're all on the same page, right? We know what the goal is, we agree with it, we think we have the way to get there, and the key here is conflict resolution. You've gone through storming, you've dealt with conflict, now the team knows how to collectively resolve a conflict, at least one, and the more you do, the better off you are. The other thing is people on the team will begin saying we rather than I, and they'll do it without even noticing they're doing it. I can walk into a group that's working together, and when I hear a lot of we's, I know they're past the storming. They're well into the norming, if not performing stage. You can just tell. Then when you get to the performing stage, you have high morale. You're really excited to be a part of the team. Your team's been succeeding. One of the keys that I found with this stage is that I can take someone new and add them to the group or replace someone in the group, and they'll come up to speed very quickly. The group is very quick to assimilate new talents and new ideas. Not so much in the norming stage can you do that. Normally when you're in the norming stage, you don't want to change the group dynamics. They're finally getting those down. But in the performing stage, when they're acting as one, you can start making some changes slightly in there. And it's a great opportunity to cross-train some other people to give them the opportunity to be in a successful group. Major issues are just continued refinement and growth. And of course, the one stage we're not going to talk about, the morning stage, or the when the project is done stage, is just saying goodbye and tying up loose ends, that kind of thing. There we go. Now, there's a leadership technique called edge training, edge leadership. Maybe you've heard about it. I went through a Wood Badge course where they taught this. And one of the things I liked about this in particular is it aligns perfectly with the forming, storming, norming, and performing. This discusses the role of leadership, particularly during these phases of a group that's forming. So the E stands for explaining. Here the role of the leader is up in front of the group. Okay, welcome to the new team, everybody. Let me tell you how this is going to go and what we need to accomplish. Everyone is spectators at this point, all the team members. So the role of the leader is to explain everything that's going to happen. And then during the storming stage, the leader needs to demonstrate. So now they're going to say, okay, let me show you some ways that we can get there. And the leader steps in and actually does one or two things with the group to show them how to do it. And then in G is guide. Now by now the group, now they're moving into the norming. They're functioning as a team now. The leader is going to slowly start backing out of the picture more and more. So the concept is now the members are now working together, and they don't necessarily need the leader. They may have a question or two, but otherwise they're able to function on their own. And then by the time you get to the last E, enable, the leader should be almost invisible. They'll be in the background watching just to see what's needed, but otherwise they're there to make sure the team is enabled, that they have the resources they need to be successful. But now, remember, one of the core elements of a team that is performing is they share leadership. They share responsibilities for leadership. So the leader is not needed as much. That's a good thing. That's a successful team. And then, as I said before, just remember, the storming phase, it looks bad, but it's a phase you need to go through. Okay? Your performance impact, the horizontal line, is you're not performing very well because you're just starting. But your effectiveness, the vertical line, is actually higher when you first form. You haven't done anything yet, but you're less than effective when you start to storm because you stop all positive activity. But again, it's a phase you need to get through to get you up to the performing level. So that is the standard team phases. Okay, that's forming teams. Now we'll talk about projects. All projects have three common elements: scope, cost is sometimes referred to as resources, and time. The reason why this is a very useful triangle, it's used in risk analysis and other things to do with projects, because no matter which one of these is my tightest constraint, if I change it, I change the dynamics of the other two. So if you're given a project and then the boss comes in later and says, you know what, instead of 90 days, I need this done in 30 days. That will impact the other two elements. I'll have to have fewer things to accomplish. I'll have to narrow my scope. I'll have to have more cost. I'll have to hire more people to do it in 30 days. We don't have the staff to do it right now. And you can work that around every corner of this triangle, but you'll find in any project, in any topic, this is something that stands true. And the whole purpose of keeping your eye on these three elements of every project is because quality is the result you're trying to get to. If you shave the time but don't change your scope and cost, you directly impact the quality. If you shave any of these and don't compensate in the other two areas, you're going to impact quality. So the idea is to keep the quality the focus by being able to change the other elements. We'll talk a little bit about change discipline and why that's important too, but this has to do with change discipline as well. Okay. A project life cycle. This is a standard project life cycle. Those of you that have project management training have heard of agile projects, often used in software development and other things. But we're mainly talking about kind of your standard projects. And they have 5 phases. And this is from the Project Management Institute, PMI, the Bible of Project Management. The first stage is initiating. When you initiate the project, you will often, and I like to use a project charter. Now you don't have to have a project charter. You can have the elements that I'm going to list underneath here separate. I like to roll them into one document because it's easier to manage. So I just call out the project charter. Your business case, right? Everyone wants a business case. You want to do something. If you're spending people's time, resources, cost, then you're impacting the business's revenue stream somehow, and decision makers need to know, why are we doing this? What are we going to get out of the end of this, and is there value in it? You put that in a business case. You need to identify a project sponsor. I have personally seen projects fail because they didn't have a clear sponsor. Who is the sponsor of the project? Who is going to say, yeah, that's what I want accomplished, and yeah, I'll make sure you have the resources you need, and when it's done, yeah, you accomplished what I wanted to see done. If you don't have that clearly defined, an individual, not just by title, a person's name, you may very well have a project that'll fail. I've seen that happen many, many times. Initial constraints, the triangle. You're going to get more into that in the planning stage, but at least throw those out initially so you have some concept of risk, if nothing else. So for instance, if you're doing a project for State Tax Commission, and it has an April 15 deadline to have something in place, that's a deadline that cannot be missed. So your major constraint there is time, and you can note that in your project charter, that time is our major constraint and therefore the highest risk to the project. And then select your project manager if that hasn't already been assigned. Obviously, everyone on the team needs to know who the project manager is so they're clear on that. A lot of people, if that's not made clear, you'll start having people going in different directions and you'll waste time and energy. And then name the team members and their roles. Notice that in this phase, you're not giving them their tasks yet. So a lot of your team members, their role may simply be team member. So that's how you start. And then identify the internal and external stakeholders. Who benefits from this? Who will be impacted by this in any way? They need to be part of the project. Then as you move into the planning stage, you're going to start collecting requirements from those stakeholders. You've just identified them in the initiating stage. Now you're going to start collecting requirements. Write them down. Define the scope. How big is this thing? How many units are we going to produce? How much of this organization are we going to be using? Your budget, you got to have a budget. And then of course your schedule. What are your timelines? And you've seen Gantt charts and other things. You need to determine where your milestones are, what the individual tasks are, how long they should take. You need to determine if this task is dependent on the previous task being done before this task can be started. Some tasks can be done simultaneously. Then create your work breakdown structures. Basically now you're going to start producing the actual tasks for the team members. And then communications is always key. In fact, my whole presentation will end on how important communications is. You need to plan how you're going to communicate. Are you going to do daily updates, weekly updates, monthly updates, quarterly updates, annual updates, depending on the size of the project and what the stakeholders want? Maybe the project sponsor wants weekly updates, but other stakeholders just want quarterly or monthly updates. Plan that out in advance. Make that clear to everybody. Now, a lot of times as you enter the executing phase, you need a review at this point. Now that the project's set up, ready to go, someone needs to shoot the starter pistol. Sometimes executive management wants to be touched at this point for the go-ahead to say, okay, yeah, I like your documentation, I like how your work breakdown structure, your scope, time, cost. Go ahead and go. So you get the blessing to move forward. So there's that. Now you're going to direct and manage the execution. You're going to make sure that everything you said you were going to do is going to get done, that someone's going to own each one of those tasks. Quality assurance. Not all projects necessarily have this tied into it, but you should be asking yourself, is there some way we're going to check quality throughout this project? Team development. Just having a team assigned doesn't necessarily develop a team, so you may, as you begin to execute your project, bring people together in a room and cross-train them in certain areas so they're receiving the same training and they're forming their group skills. Distribute information. This is kind of that communication thing. How are you going to communicate? How often and in what form? Do you want it in an email? Do you want some other kind of documentation? And then throughout the project, this is another area where I see project managers often fail. They'll say, well, I've dotted every I and crossed every T, but if they don't manage the stakeholders' expectations, it doesn't matter if the project manager says the project has succeeded, it will have failed if it doesn't meet what the stakeholders thought they were going to get out of the project. So you have to manage their expectations at the beginning and the end, but also throughout the project. Then you enter into the controlling phase. You're now moving forward. Now you have to have controls in place to make sure everything stays on track. One of the things you should have done clear back in the planning phase was start to identify what possible problems might occur. Remember we talked about risk. As you think about risk, you're going to be writing down what some of the actual events might occur that would cause problems for your project. So by now you should have those in place so that when they happen you're able to mitigate them, to reduce the risk and the impact of events. Utilize change control. This is something that even seasoned project managers have a difficult time with, but it's very important. So if someone comes in and says, well, you know what, as long as you're building 10 widgets, I want 7 maniforms done too, right? So the project manager's role is to say, okay, well here's what it's going to take to do that. We're going to need more money, we're going to have to extend the cost, we're going to have to extend the time for the project, and we're going to need more resources. And then you take it back to the project sponsor to get approval for every change of the project. Just because someone on the side or one of the stakeholders wants to change the project or the scope, don't do that. Projects will go on forever if you allow the scope creep to occur. Make sure you go back to the project sponsor to get approval for any change to your project. Otherwise you'll be chasing completion of the project around the rest of your life. Monitor risks. We kind of talked about that. If you've identified them up front, you should be able to monitor them throughout the project. Sometimes even with the status. Okay, 3 elements are very important. Milestones, milestones, and milestones. I can't overemphasize this, and I'll show you why in just a second. If this ever goes. There we go. Okay, so this is an aspect of a project. I just made this up. We're going to say this project was going to go a calendar year, January through December. They never do, but we're keeping it simple. And we decided as we planned this project, got all the feedback from the stakeholders, we looked at costs. And again, this is just one aspect of the project. To keep it simple, we're going to talk about the money. This is a cumulative cost. We said we were going to spend $5,000 this way throughout the life cycle of the project. This is what we said we were going to do. We got it all planned. It was done really well. What I will see happen time and time again, I'll never stop seeing these occur, is the actual spending will look something like this. Now the problem is, someone got reassigned in February, maybe a new project manager got reassigned somewhere else, and it just got left. Now the project sponsor is still expecting something to occur in December. They think they're going to get an outcome of this thing. The finance department hasn't noticed anything because everything's green. You haven't overspent your budget, right? Finance departments, they look for overspending. They don't have underspending feelers out there, so they don't care. And all of a sudden you're in November, you got 30 days left, and we're going, oh my goodness, how are we going to deliver the product now? We're in huge, huge trouble. So how do we keep this from happening? What?
Have milestones.
Milestones. What kind of milestones? What would you do, for instance?
Well, let's say you're planning a website. So
Okay.
you do a draft, right?
All right.
You have the draft, and a month later, you do some usability studies based on the draft.
Right. So you have a deliverable that's expected, and if it doesn't happen, someone's going to notice, right? That's your milestone. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? It's one of those existential things. I don't know, I have a problem with eating elephants, but that's how you eat one. Reminds me of my son. He asked me the other day, he says, Dad, do you know why seagulls, or Utah State bird, do you know why seagulls fly out over the sea? And I'm thinking, okay, well, they're a trash bird. They're usually flying out over the landfills. God, I don't know, son, why do seagulls fly out over the sea? He said, because if they flew out over the bay, they'd be called bagels. I thought he was asking a serious question. I didn't know. Okay. So yeah, you're going to put in place some kind of milestones so that along the way, if we had this milestone in place and come March, we weren't there, we found out we were down there, we could take corrective action in time to save this project. But without the milestones in place, we're doomed. It's just not going to happen. So I can't overemphasize milestones, 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 right? One bite at a time out of the elephant. Okay, closing phase of a project. Now you go back and look at your charter. We said we're going to do all these things. Did we accomplish them or not? Yeah, I just said. Okay, then you're going to transition from building to managing. I'll give you an example. We're wrapping up a project right now called two-factor authentication. And the idea is you have not just your normal network login, but some other factor to authenticate with. It might be your thumbprint, who you are, that kind of thing. There might be a token, something you have on your key ring. A little window pops up and you have to put that little password in too. And the tokens are continually changing their password. So if someone gets your laptop and they have your login, they still can't log in without the token which you have in your pocket. So that's called two-factor authentication. Well, we're about to wrap that project up. The problem is We don't have a product description in place. We don't have a product in place. So if someone calls a help desk with their new tokens, our help desk has no idea what to do with that phone call. They weren't told they were going to get any phone calls about any tokens. They never heard about those before. So you have to be able to transition from what you built to how you're going to maintain it. And so that has to be put in place. And that's going to happen at the end of the project. It can become part of the project as far as making sure it's ready to happen, but you still have to transition to it. In other words, you might have to train your help desk staff as one of your last steps. And one of the things that's always important, if you're doing project management on a regular basis, if you find yourself being a project manager or managing people who manage projects, make sure you go back to the sponsors and ask them how the project went, and don't have the project manager ask. Have someone away from the project manager so you get a good, honest answer, to get good feedback from the sponsor, because the feedback, at the end of every project, you should have feedback on how the next project can be improved, because projects can always be improved. But if you forget that last loop at the end, you'll never see project improvement. And then, of course, recognize efforts. Who doesn't like to get a candy bar or a certificate or something, or just a thank you? They're very nice to have. Okay, and in conclusion, I told you that I was going to end on communication. This is very important. So, like for instance, you've heard of advertising on school buses. That's a big thing now. Revenue generation for school districts, that kind of thing. If you're going to advertise, like for instance, say a no smoking campaign or to stop smoking, you need to be careful how you display it on the school bus, because it might give the wrong impression. So it's not always the message, sometimes it's how it's presented, okay? You got to be really clear about these kind of things. Now, if you happen to own an airline and you wanted to advertise, a great place to advertise is in an airport. I mean, you have all kinds of walls, moving escalators. But if you're going to advertise on an escalator, you might want to choose the one going up. You might give people the wrong impression. I suddenly don't want to rush out and get tickets on Turkish Airlines. I don't know. Maybe they just put on the screen backwards. I don't know. And lastly, I don't know, have you here like Starbucks? Any Starbucks drinkers in here? Just a couple? Okay, well, when you advertise your product on the side of a van with doors that slide open, you might want to be careful about what that would look like as well. You might send the wrong message. Okay. Any questions? Other than when does lunch start, right? I know that's what you're thinking. So one more, you had a question. You're right.
Sorry, what kind of advice do you have for, like, if you're managing a team with for a project and you don't have, I guess, direct responsibility over those people, so you have account or responsibility but no authority kind of thing?
That is the song of all project managers. Yeah, so the question is, if you're a project manager and you have people on your team that don't answer to you, how do you manage those resources? Project managers deal with that all the time. It's very frustrating. Obviously the best way to do is go to that people's supervisors, explain to them what you're trying to accomplish and how much of that person's time you need. The resource owners, the resource managers, the people that manage your resources, they don't like it if you just have them show up for a meeting that wasn't scheduled to do other things. But if you let them know in advance, I'm going to use this person, I'll only use them on Mondays and Wednesdays in the morning hours. If you can work that out ahead of time, you'll get a lot more support from those resource managers than if you just send an email out to your team, hey, everybody show up at 3 o'clock Thursday afternoon, and then the meetings move around. The resource managers can be just as frustrated towards a project manager as project managers can be towards resource managers. So you've got to work that out at the resource management level, not the team level. You may have a person on your team who is fully behind you, you see eye to eye, you've got the whole thing laid out, but if the resource manager isn't in the loop, you'll have a hard time using that resource. That's an excellent question. That's a very common problem in project management. But yeah, the key is to communicate directly with the resource managers.
I was most intrigued by your talk about personality styles and communication styles. And I was wondering if you could give any advice, maybe groups that have all one communication style or differing, and what are some ways to sometimes resolve the extroverts and introverts and people speaking differently?
You know, the hardest thing in the world is when everyone is the extrovert, when everyone wants to grab the steering wheel and lead, right? What you hope for is you have a mixture of both, because introverts actually work very well with extroverts. They're like, yeah, you lead. I'm behind you 100%, and they'll give great support. And the people that want to lead, they're happy to lead too, so that works very well. It's a little harder when everyone wants to grab the steering wheel. You have problems, obviously, and then when everybody wants to be the introvert and just sit there and listen and not participate, that's actually sometimes worse. So it's a good question. I don't have a one-size-fits-all answer, but I think that going back to what we talked about, how to form team interactions, one of those 3 elements, do the personality tests. I used to think that was like reading tea leaves. I didn't believe in that at all. But you know what? There is factual basis in doing that. There's some value in doing that. There's value in knowing that, hey, I know that this person's introverted, and I know this person is this way, and that person is that way. At least enough to interact with them. But one of the simplest ways to do it, especially if you're having difficulties with your team, get them outside of the project. Set the project aside and go do something else. Take them bowling or something, but you know, like I said, do the collage, something that has nothing to do with the project, something that is not threatening to anybody. Because when you have a lot of introverts, or maybe one introvert and a table full of extroverts around them, it's sometimes very painful for them to learn how to interact. But in a non-threatening way, people will learn to interact a lot more quickly and easily. Hope that answers your questions. There's not a magic answer to that. Sometimes you have to vary your approach. That's important too. Anything else?
Will slides be available?
These slides are online. I gave them to Ron, so somebody has them somewhere. They'll get posted. If you want the funny slides, you'll have to email me, because I took all the funny stuff out of it. I didn't want to offend anybody. Somebody might own stock in Starbucks or something. I don't know. But if you email me, I'll give you the good slides. So, okay. If that's it, turn it back to you.